Hey everyone, welcome to Talks of Thailand. My name is Jon. Today's story is about a man who says Thailand made him feel alive in a way that he'd never felt before. I'm thinking this gave him a false sense of security. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, give the video a like, and let's get into today's story. When I jumped off the back of that pickup truck after what seemed like an eternity of travelling, I really felt like I'd made the right call by going to join that volunteering mission up in northern Thailand. This was approximately 20 years ago now. I'd set off from the UK, flying first to Dubai, then on to Bangkok, then up to Chiang Mai in the north, where I was met by somebody who took me up into the reaches of Chiang Rai, close to where I was doing this volunteering work. During that journey, I felt like it might have been a big mistake. I felt like I was being taken to the furthest reaches of the world, and I was witnessing things that I'd never witnessed before, experiencing things that I'd never experienced before, and I felt like I was a fish out of water. When I finally arrived and stepped off the back of that pickup, after we travelled probably for an hour down this really old, dilapidated dirt track, and I saw all the people who I was there to volunteer for, I felt like it had all been worth it. I was put up in a small little shack with an outside bathroom when I was there, and I was joined by another few volunteers. This was a hill tribe group of people who were all Thai, in the sense of being Thai, but they weren't Thai nationality. They were the people left behind in Thailand that many people didn't really talk about, and I'd found out about this volunteering work that was possible, and I was ready for a bit of time out off work and for a different start. I'd done the same job for a long time, and although I was paid well, I felt like I needed a break. Probably also because I'd just been divorced about 6 months before. I packed everything in and decided to do something different and try to make a difference in the world. I was 50 years old, exactly 50 years old. I'd celebrated my birthday a month before I arrived in Thailand, and I had 2 kids who had gone off to live with their mother. Although I really tried my best to get custody, it just didn't work that way. My eldest was 14, youngest was 12, and I got a payment plan arranged to send money to their mother every month, just like you have to do when you're a guy putting up with all these things. I just didn't want to work at that moment, and that's why I took on this role. It was only a short amount of time, but it was just meant to be a transition. When I got there, all that big journey felt like it had been worth it in the end, and I really felt like I hit the ground running as well as I could. I wasn't sure what to expect when I went on this volunteering trip. It was only meant to be for 2 weeks, just lend a helping hand. It was a paid volunteering thing, and the money went to build a school or other things to help connect this community to the modern world, because they were really like they were left behind from Thailand in a way that most of the communities didn't seem to be. I'd given myself a month in total in Thailand, just to get away. I'd already quit my job, planning to get a different job when I got back home. I wanted to move to a different part of the country. I wanted to reinvent myself. I didn't think Thailand would do what it did to me, though. I don't want to wax lyrical about those first 2 weeks doing the volunteering, because it was just your typical sort of volunteering mission, and it wasn't anything that I would have wanted to have done again, though it did introduce me to Thailand in the first place. After I'd spent that time there, I was looking forward to going down to Bangkok and seeing the completely different side to Thailand, the modern side to Thailand, that everybody talked about as a great place to go on holiday. The side of Thailand where you would see big luxury buildings and fancy cars on the gridlocked streets. I just wasn't expecting it to be as fantastic as it actually was. Hand on heart promise, the biggest promise I've ever promised, I had no intention whatsoever of getting carried away in Thailand or introducing myself to the girls' scene or anything like that. That wasn't the plan at all. It wasn't even part of the plan. When I got back to Bangkok, that's where I landed originally, I just felt like it was my turn to have a good time. I felt like I'd done a very good deed up in the north. I felt like I'd developed connections to another part of the country and to another volunteering person who was there. They were actually there a lot longer than I was, and I kept in touch briefly with them and met them up later in the future. But I really did feel like I'd done a good job and a good deed. I felt like I'd done something that was notable and that I should allow myself some time to myself as a way to congratulate myself. Not necessarily that, because I didn't feel like I needed congratulating, but as a way to just give myself a pat on the back for a job well done. That's why I was so looking forward to taking in everything that Bangkok had to offer, based on where I thought I was and the best place to stay in terms of a hotel in Bangkok. What I'm trying to say is I had looked into this before. I had a hotel booked along Sukhumvit Road, or just along one of the side streets along Sukhumvit Road, in an area called Prumpong. It was about a 300-metre walk down the soi, a very modern building that I stayed in, only 8 stories, so not the kind of your typical hotel that you would see, this huge place with a swimming pool and all those facilities. It was more of a new, local-style hotel that I would learn over the years was being built in abundance in Bangkok during that time, and this was one of the first ones. I was alarmed about just how cheap it was. It was the equivalent of about £18 a night, and that gave you a luxury room, a beautiful double bed, a very comfortable mattress, a bathtub, and a shower that was separate. There was a swimming pool on the 4th floor or 3rd floor, and it kind of wrapped its way around the building, though it didn't have great views because it wasn't high up. The luxury that you were able to get in Bangkok at that time was just on a whole other level of luxury than you've experienced before, and the contrast to what the place I stayed up in the first time up in Chiang Rai, that was night and day different, and I really kind of revelled in the fact that I was able to stay in such opulence for such a cheap amount of money. In hindsight, it was probably not the best place to stay, because around that area I found, as the time went by, that it was very popular with people from Japan or Japanese expats who were perhaps working in Thailand and Japanese tourists, and there were lots of places that catered towards Japanese people, though that wasn't necessarily a problem. It only took me a day to really kind of get my bearings and know that when I come out of the soi, if I want to go and find the excitement, you don't turn left, which would take you up to Tong Law and further up the SkyTrain route, you'd turn right. Prompong, you'd walk a bit, and then you'd be walking and find yourself in a sock at that huge intersection. This was before Terminal 21 was across the street from that direction where I was coming from. And I was just really loving Bangkok. It was only my first day there, and I had plans to do the cultural side of things. That, hand on heart again, is what I was there to do. I wanted to see that famous temple, the name eludes me, the one with the huge gold Buddha lying down. I wanted to see that. I wanted to do a small river cruise because I understood that the history of Bangkok was kind of water-based and they had little canal areas similar to where I was from. There were canals all around, and that was something I wanted to do, and just take it all in like you do when you go on holiday. And that's basically what I thought I was going to do. What happened on my first day there, though, I'd arrived quite early in the morning. I'd flown down from Chiang Rai, and originally when I flew in, I flew from Bangkok to Chiang Mai and then drove up. Though, because I could fly from Chiang Rai, that's what I did, and I landed in Bangkok quite early and made my way to the hotel. They let me check in early, and I had a bit of a rest, and that's when I walked down Sukhumvit Road, in the right direction as I said, had something to eat, and I was just taking it all in. I was walking back up Sukhumvit Road, probably mid-afternoon I would say, and I got to the side of the street, and I was on the side of the street where you were going up in the direction towards Prompong, and carrying up along with the traffic. And on the other side of the road I just noticed a small little collection of bars, and it was quite early, and there were a couple of girls there, though I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together and thinking that this is, one of those bars that people talk about Thailand for. I was of the mind that those sorts of places were very concentrated in very, very particular parts of the city. I didn't realise they were spread out all over the place. Again I just thought, well, I've earned a drink, haven't I? So I decided to cross the road. This happened to be a soi called Sukhumvit Soi 22, and I crossed the road and went into the first bar there, had a drink, and again it was quite early. There weren't necessarily girls working there in abundance or anything like that, and I was just enjoying myself, having a few drinks, and I walked out and thought, do I turn and go more up the street, or do I go back to my hotel? It was still afternoon, though I had plans to wake early the following day to do that tour around and get stuck into the cultural side of things before heading home, a changed man, as you would say. But I did decide to go to have a few more drinks. I can even remember the name of the bar that I walked into. It was called the Connection Bar. It was about 50 to 150 metres from the foot of Sukhumvit Soi 22, and it was the Connection Bar. It was just this nondescript sort of place. I thought to myself I'll have a few drinks in there, and I promise, and some people think I will be lying by saying this, but hand on heart here again, that I had no understanding what this was, that it was that sort of bar, or it could have been that sort of bar. Because when I walked into it, there were no scantily clad girls anywhere. There was just one girl behind the bar. I thought, that's a bartender. I wasn't even thinking, that is a bartender, though looking back, I suppose that's how I would describe it now. I just ordered myself a beer Chang. It was just a beer that seemed to represent Thailand in a way, and that was through no understanding other than that's how it felt. Perhaps it was the beer most marketed abroad, even though it wasn't necessarily popular abroad where I was from, though you'd heard of beer Chang, hadn't you? You hadn't heard of the other ones, even though Singer was an older brand, I came to believe later. I'm sitting there, beer in hand, with this Chang, and before long, the bartender starts talking to me. A conversation which I thought was quite exciting to start with. Where do you come from? How long have you been in Thailand? Then I'm telling them my adventures up in the north, doing my volunteering work and how I felt like I was making a difference. And, she said, that sounds great, very good thing to do. And I was feeling quite proud of myself, the way she was talking to me in this way. Again, not putting two and two together, but I'd say I was on my second beer in there, so my fourth beer in all. Not a lot of beer, only small bottles, but probably my second beer in there when I noticed this other girl walk in, and she said hi to the bartender, and they talked a bit in Thai. What they were saying, I have no idea. I didn't know a word of Thai, what anything meant up until this point, apart from, I suppose, the few I'd learnt up north, which was just hello, how much, and a few of the numbers, and I was actually using those to my effect, believing I was quite cultured knowing those. Anyway, they're speaking to each other for a very brief moment, and this other girl walks into the back area, and she comes out having got changed, and she looks quite beautiful, and I thought to myself, perhaps she's just a waitress. And again, I'm not putting two and two together and thinking anything other than what I originally thought this was, which was just a normal place. Then she just parks herself right next to me and reaches out a hand. Perhaps because the other girl, who was the bartender, went into the back with her, perhaps she was informed that I was new to Thailand or whatever, and perhaps I didn't know what was going on. She was very forward, reaching out her hand, nice to meet you, hello again, same kind of questions that the bartender lady had asked me, and I'm thinking this is fun and interesting and exciting and I'm going with it. And we speak for 5 minutes and then she's got a drink. Then another girl walks in and another girl, and although I'm noticing them, I'm not noticing them, apart from briefly. Yet there were no other customers in the bar yet, and I'm just still talking to this girl. And after about 2 or 3 more drinks, probably an hour or so has gone by, and it's just starting to get dark outside. She just so matter-of-factly says, well, would you like to go with me? What do you mean? That was when it twigged. I was quite alarmed and shocked with myself because I wasn't expecting to even go into a place like that. But there I was in a place like that, not knowing. And if someone had told me before I went, would you actually have done something like that? I would have said absolutely not and laughed at it. I just thought though and said to myself, yes, that sounds good. I mean, we're not that late, so what do you want to do? Perhaps I was a bit wide-eyed and naive on that front. What do you want to do? Up to you, she said. Let's go and get something to eat. So we go to a little bit further up the soy and have something to eat there. And then we go for some drinks at this club that she took me to, which was actually quite a long way away. I would later learn that that was one of the clubs up on Ratchadar Road. Why she took me there, I don't know. It took 25 minutes to get there in a taxi based on the traffic. And again, I'm just letting loose and she's letting loose. And it was fantastic and I'm having the time of my life. And it was just so far away from anything I would have ever experienced and thought I was going to experience. Next morning I wake up and she's with me and I'm thinking that was unexpected, though it was one of the best times I'd had. And she wakes up and, looks as if she wants to go. And it took me, I guess, a minute or so to kind of have that aha moment as if to say, well, she wants something before she goes, doesn't she? After that, I did feel quite bad because I'd done something I thought I would never do. But on the other hand, when I kind of sobered up a bit, because I still felt quite drunk from the night before, got over that hangover, slept a bit more, went for a swim in the pool, found myself going out of the hotel and to that river cruise that I'd already booked. I'm out on this river cruise and it's fantastic. There's no Icon Siam, there's none of this modern stuff that you see today, and I'm experiencing and witnessing these amazing communities that live by the side of canals that must have been there for generations. Then I went to see that temple that I wanted to see, and I just thought that was amazing, and it really was. I was really attracted to the cultural side of things in Thailand, it really was great. And then, probably around 1 a.m, I find myself in Chinatown, which is known as Yarawat in Thailand. What a wonderful place that was. I'm walking past all these gold shops, all these little back alleys with shop houses that again seem to have been manned by the same family for generations, and it's just a cultural wonder of the place that really was sticking out to me. Honestly though, in the back of my mind, I was thinking about one thing and one thing alone, about how fantastic the previous night was. I was trying to pinch myself and ask myself, was it a dream or was it real? And for the whole day, while I'm having the fantastic time I was having, I was still thinking, was that real or was it not? I kept telling myself, well, you don't really need to go back because you're just going to get carried away, but also telling myself you have to go back just to confirm what happened actually really did happen. After I left Chinatown, I also forgot to say I went up to Khao Son Road in the early evening, and that, was just getting set up. I was already quite worn out from the day, but I just had to go and check it out because it was reasonably close to the area I was in. Immediately though, I didn't really like Khao San Road at all. Nothing necessarily wrong with it, but it was more of the younger backpack sorts, more of the, Western tourists who want to meet other Western tourists, or who wants to hang around with other Western tourists. And that just wasn't what I was interested in. I mean, I didn't realise I wasn't interested until actually going and seeing it firsthand. I didn't realise that I wouldn't like it. Again, it's not important. But I left around early evening and I get back to my hotel around 7 p.m. completely worn out from the day of having one of the best times I'd have, though I hadn't stopped thinking about what that night before was for the whole day. I just felt excited to go back, even though I tried to tell myself not to. And I went back to that same bar, the Connection Bar, and she was there again and we start talking again. And it's like we're old friends. It's like just part of this secret little club that you had to land on your feet in to be able to find. I think that's where I would like to say something very important. Okay, back then, 20 years ago, or when I say 20, it could have been off by a couple of years. I can't remember exactly, because things happened after that. And well, anyway, I'll get to that soon. But you had to sort of stumble across a place like that. You've heard about it through people and through things, but you've never seen it. You haven't been shown anything other than the rumours that you've heard, whereabouts you're from, people talk about it, and what Thailand's like, and how it's kind of frowned upon as a location. I think that's the thing back then. Thailand was kind of frowned upon, and today it's more of a cool place to go. But I found this place though, and I believed I found it. And there were people, probably who were of the same age as me, on that same river cruise as me, other Western tourists, single guys, who were there, who perhaps weren't aware of just how wonderful and how amazing this particular thing was, unless they found it, and they might not be able to find it. Anyway, I'm probably just thinking that I was special or cleverer than I actually was, and I shouldn't think like that. Back in the bar on that second night, it's just a repeat of the day before. And although I don't really have any strong feelings for this girl, it's just like, I can't believe I'm able to do this. Then I'm also thinking there are lots of other girls around, though perhaps you've got to, hit it off with someone like I hit it off with her for this to be possible. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, though I went back to see her for another 2 nights before I got the courage to go somewhere else, and that was when I encountered the soy cowboy for the first time. What a crazy little street, but I had a wonderful time there, and I went there, can't remember the name of the bar there, I was already really into it by then, and I had a wonderful time with the girl there. Then I'm in Pat Pong, in Nana Plaza, Sukhumvit Soi 4, Sukhumvit Soi 8. Back then, Sukhumvit Soi 8 was a lot better than it is today. They had bars there as well. Sukhumvit Soi Level had many more bars than it does today, which have all gone. I suppose they have some now, though it's not like it used to be. By the end of my holiday, the thoughts of volunteering that I'd been there to do had completely vanished from my mind, and I was now completely sold on the idea of Thailand as a place where I could reinvent myself. Not only on the front of being a volunteer and helping out like that, though reinvent myself in my life and have a new life. When I got back home, back to the small rented place that I had after I got divorced, instead of thinking about finding a new job like I wanted to do and moving to a different part of the country, which I was doing kind of on autopilot, I spent all my time thinking about Thailand and wanting to go back for another look. And, would it be as good the second time? Life kind of got in the way from there. I would say it was a good 3 years before I went back to Thailand, because I did move to another part of the country. I did find a new job, and I'm just ticking over on a daily basis, paying the child support, kids are getting older, going to see my kids and spending as much time with them as possible, although they were a 3-hour drive from where I was from. It's just like my life's ticking over, and the thoughts of Thailand did fade, though they were always there. And I hadn't had a holiday for a long time, and I thought I would go back to Thailand again, because yes, the thoughts were still there. Thoughts about how great it was, they hadn't faded, though the whole thing had faded to such a level where I was kind of in Thailand for a second time, though it was like the first time all over again. Although I wasn't there to volunteer, and I was only there for 2 weeks, and I kind of remembered how fantastic it was the first time and how great it was. I think it was that holiday that made me understand that I should perhaps consider moving to Thailand, because I was of an age where I could get a retirement visa. At the time, Thailand was still so affordable. I could perhaps retire with what I had, and these are the thoughts I'm starting to have. That was my second time there, and these are the thoughts I'm having, just in Bangkok, living it up around the wonderful bars, meeting wonderful girls, having wonderful nights, and just wishing that, I didn't have to go home, on the hand knowing that I had to. It was that second trip that kind of reaffirmed my love of Thailand, which made me understand that the thoughts I was having about Thailand when I wasn't there weren't just not extreme enough, because although I thought about Thailand, I forgot how good it was. The ideas weren't extreme enough. I just kind of thought, it's an anomaly, it's a one-off, it wasn't real. But I don't know what it is. After that second trip, after I got back from that, back to work, I just decided, give myself 2 more years and I'll retire. My youngest would be getting on 18 at that point, not quite, so I wouldn't have these commitments for much longer. hopefully get them sent off in the world in a great way, and when I'm able to, start this brand new adventure in life, and who knows, perhaps I would meet someone again. That's the thing that I would point to and say, why did I think that? I'd met lots of girls and it was casual and it was great, and you had to spend a little bit of money here and there, though it wasn't a lot. Why did I think meeting somebody would be a good idea? I don't know, though that's what I thought about when I arrived back home after that second trip. Those 2 years go by and it was 55 when I retired. Never bought myself another house after the divorce, and we had sold the first one. I had investments in terms of cash, and I just cashed in my private pension, which wasn't a fortune, though I think it was about £750 a month, and I had a lump sum amount of money, which based on my understanding of Thailand was more than enough. Again, I was basing it on the Thailand prices that I arrived in originally, and the exchange rate of the time, which changed a bit, though I didn't feel like it was too drastic and too concerning. I had 200 grand and 750 quid a month, and I thought that was enough to have a wonderful time. I can remember telling my kids I was leaving, and they were saying, go for it, Dad, live your life and enjoy yourself. The thing was, that's what I was going to do. I think it was 2010 when I retired full-time, or early 2011. I mean, I could find out, but it's not really important. Let's just call it the end of 2010, when I retired for good. 55 years old, 55 and a half most likely. I got a retirement visa, which I was able to extend when I arrived in Thailand, and I just felt set up. The exchange rate still wasn't too bad, and I did what I thought was the best thing to do. I just transferred all my money into Thailand, apart from a little bit, about 20 grand, then into a bank account I'd opened up, and I rented this small place in Bangkok, around Pompong, and just began living. What many people say with regards to holiday mode is definitely true. When I arrived, I felt like I was on holiday, and if I look back, although this wasn't life-ruining nor threatening me in any way, shape or form in terms of what I was able to do, I really did allow myself to get carried away so much more than I should have done. Holiday mode is a real thing, and if you're not careful, you can find yourself in holiday mode for so much longer than you should be in it, and spending so much more money than you should be spending. I was just in my element. I was newly retired and I was celebrating and I was happy. Again, I feel like Thailand gave me the sort of happiness that I didn't realise was possible. I think that would be the best way to put it. It made me feel alive in a way I didn't feel possible. Thailand gave me all this unique sort of happiness that I hadn't felt forever, and it was when I moved to Thailand that I realised how depressed I must have actually been back at home after the divorce. I wasn't depressed in Thailand, I was just loving it. It was a number of months of just craziness and wildness, not leaving Bangkok once, hearing about all these places that you had to go to and check out, and people would say you should go to Pattaya, that's great. People would say you should go to Phuket, that's great, and the typical sorts of places, and I'm starting to have a few friends that are expats. There was this one guy, I just want to talk about him. He was an Australian, and he claimed to be this computer expert, and I was never really up on computers based on just who I was and the things I did, and I had this computer issue, and he said he'd come round and help me, and he comes around and he completely destroys it, and then he'd meet people, and the reason I wanted to talk about that, because he'd meet people from all kinds of walks of life, though lots of people would claim to be things that you could tell that just weren't. I've met so many special forces guys in Thailand who you can tell clearly that they weren't special forces, and people would ask me what I did, and I would tell them exactly what I did. I was this or whatever. I would tell them. Why would I lie? Was it a glamorous job? No. Though you'd meet people who claimed to be ex-special forces, and this guy who claimed to be a spy, and look at him, you could tell he wasn't. Anyway, this computer wizard destroyed my computer. Didn't fall out with him though, but it was just funny when you think about things and remember things. It was when I kind of not necessarily got over holiday mode, because holiday mode didn't leave for much longer after that. It was when I decided that I did want to take a trip away, just for a week, and just to go to the beach. I hadn't been to the beach in Thailand once. I hadn't seen the famous beach side of Thailand even once yet, because I was too busy living this amazing time in Bangkok. So it was like every day was great, and I didn't need to do anything else. But it was the last, I would say, as cliche as it might sound. I decided I would go to this little island that all my friends and all my acquaintances were recommending, and which I'd heard many guys talk about before. The island was called Koh Samet. I decided I would go there. For a start off, it wasn't too far away from Bangkok, which was convenient. Secondly, I just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. That's where everyone said was the place to go. I can remember I went from my place. I'd rented that place in Prompong. I think I just chose that area because that was where I went first, and I kind of felt a connection to it. Typical, close to the connection bar, I suppose. That might have been why I chose there, because of that bar. But perhaps that's the reason why, yet I don't necessarily know. Perhaps it was all subconscious. But I walked to the Ekamai bus station, and then from Ekamai I got the bus to Ban Phe Pier in Rayong, which I can remember doing. I remember getting that bus there because it was, one of the events that really, I suppose, introduced the side of Thailand much later on than you hear about in the stories and things of that nature. Anyway, I don't want to give too much away, so I arrive at Bangkok Pier, and all these touts are around asking if I want to go on their boats. Do you want a speedboat or a normal boat? And I just went for the normal boat. We couldn't have picked a more picture-perfect day to be able to go to Koh Samet. Crystal clear ocean, blue sky, no clouds in sight, and just this steady rock as the boat went from Rayong over to Koh Samet Island. And again, this was a long time ago, and it wasn't as touristy as it is today. I mean, it was very touristy, though nowhere near on the level of it is today. And the last time I went, which again, I will get to. Just arriving on the island and just feeling like you're in some kind of paradise. Bear in mind, I hadn't been anywhere apart from Bangkok and that volunteering mission up in Chiang Rai in Thailand since I'd been there. And here I am at this idyllic kind of place that you can't even picture as being real until you actually see it for yourself. I got on the back of this pickup, which was the mode of transport available, and they'd take you up the main road and drop you off at the national park entrance, so you've got to pay money to go inside. They've changed the national park entrance. Now you've got to pay when you get off the boat. Before you didn't. So I handed over the money for that and walked, because I could see the sea in the distance, down this little pathway, and I was led to believe from my friends who had been many times, you just walk into one of the places and ask for a room, and that's what I did. It was the second or third hotel along. Walk down that passageway, turn right, and that's the hotel I stayed at. It wasn't much of a room, no air conditioning. Just rooms with air conditioning were more expensive, but I just didn't think I needed it. I didn't mind about stuff like that, in all honesty. So I got into the room, dropped off the bags, and went out front of the hotel. They had the restaurant and bar there. And I remember having a cheeseburger. Although I did like Thai food a lot, I just fancied a burger for whatever reason. Had a couple of drinks, went for a swim in the sea, and I'm just feeling that this place is amazing. It was in the evening, though. I already had a couple of drinks in me by this point. I went for a walk back down in the direction of where the big boat drops you off from, coming over from the mainland, and I overhear this conversation. It was in English. It was quite heated. You bad man, you bad man, you bad man. I'm hearing this, and I walk a bit further, and I hear it louder. And there's this little bar on the left as you're heading down in that direction, and there was this guy who must have been slightly older than me, and this really beautiful girl who was considerably younger than him, and they were in this really heated argument. You bad man, why I come here, you? I can remember it. I can remember it exactly. Why you? Why I come here with you? I don't know why I come here with you. He's saying I paid for you, I paid for this, and I don't know. It was quite an unpleasant conversation, and there was only one other girl in there, though she was behind the bar, trying to take a distance from herself from that. Before long, this guy storms out, saying, make your own way back to Bangkok, and I'm thinking, oh dear. Always the sort of guy who likes a bit of drama, and who likes a bit of entertainment, and was a bit nosy, and I had a couple of drinks in me by this point. I walked into the bar, ordered a drink, and before this girl had a chance to walk out, I said, is everything okay? Anything I can do to help? She said, no, I came with my boyfriend, and I don't want to stay with him anymore because he was cheating on me with a lady or something like that. I wasn't paying too close attention to exactly what she was saying, but I can remember this feeling that she didn't really like this guy, and perhaps from what I believe as of today, she'd just met him not long ago and decided that he wanted to take her to the beach to be his holiday girlfriend, and took her from Bangkok to the island and, didn't get on with her, and then this happened. Though at the time I thought it was perhaps a more serious relationship than it actually was. She's telling me all this, and I'm saying, oh dear, do you want me to get you a drink? She said, yes, please. I suppose if you think about it, it was obvious that she'd only just met this guy because you ask questions, where did he come from? And she said, I think he came from Germany. She said, I think. How old is he? She doesn't really know. What's his name? She doesn't know. So okay, yes, it was casual, but at the time you don't necessarily pick up on that. Anyway, what happened from there was a couple more drinks. She says she's going to go back and look for her boyfriend, and I say, go for it. I'm still there, though, an hour later, and she comes back. She said her boyfriend's not in the hotel anymore. She doesn't have anywhere to stay. She doesn't have any money on her, and she's upset. And it's not like she's asking me for anything, but I said you could stay with me if you want, and she did. And I suppose I'm laughing as I'm saying this. She actually stayed with me. Great time. The following morning, and I'm not asking, are you going to go and do anything, or are you going to go and look for your boyfriend or go back to Bangkok? I just go down to have some breakfast, and she comes to breakfast with me, and I order something, and she orders something, and I'm just going along with it. And it was just like she was with me now, and that was it. It was like I didn't have a choice about it, though I loved it. I loved the way that I met her, I loved everything about it, and I was just completely smitten by this girl, who I found out was 28 years old. She was from, you guessed it, Buriram in Isan. Said that she was living in Bangkok, and she didn't say what she was doing for a living. She didn't say she was living with her boyfriend or anything. So I did ask her what she did in Bangkok, and she just said, I work as a bartender, she said. And I just thought, wow, a bartender. But I did suppose I knew what that meant, although I tried to push what it meant to the back of my mind. Because I didn't necessarily meet her in a bar. I mean, I met her in a bar, just not a bar where she was working in. I'm starting to find out all these things about her, starting to like her, and I was only going to be in Koh Samet probably for a week, and she stays with me that night and again, and no sign of a boyfriend whatsoever. He's just left, so probably nothing serious. And it was coming time for me to go to Bangkok, and I asked her, what are your plans? She said you didn't have any, just go back to work in Bangkok. I told her I was going, and do you want to come with me? And she said yes, and we got back to Bangkok. And she doesn't go off and get on the bus and go in her own direction. She says, where's your place? Do you want me to stay with you? And I said, okay, you can if you want to. And then we're back in my place. I must say I didn't usually take girls to my place. I had my go-to hotel whenever I wanted something casual, though she's in my place and, had no plans that day. What are we going to do from there? I don't know. I find that I go out and she's going with me, and it was just kind of like she was with me from now, when I didn't question it or push for it not to be like that, because I was loving every second of it, and I just felt complete in a way, like I hadn't necessarily felt before, when it came to any of the other girls that I'd met. I'd met a lot, I'd partied a lot, I'd been wild a lot. I was loving life, though, with her. It felt different. It felt like, okay, she can be with me if she wants to be, and I want this, and if she wants that as well, then what's stopping us? It was like we meant to be with each other. What is stopping us from having each other in our lives? What's stopping this amazing thing from happening right in front of us? I couldn't have been happier. I couldn't have felt more alive. I couldn't honestly have been happier at all. Even so that I'm not noticing that the days are kind of all blending in together. I'm not going out and going wild as much, though sometimes we go out together for a drink and we go to a bar and she'll go with me, and she's right at home at places like that, and I should have known. Yes, she worked in a bar too, and she met a guy, went to Koh Samet, they didn't get on, and that's how I met her. I should have known that, but I suppose I just wanted to overlook the fact that she worked in a bar, and although I subconsciously knew, perhaps I just pretended not to. I was just loving how we could go into a bar and she didn't mind if I flirted with the girls a bit, and perhaps she was flirting with the girls too, perhaps she was, who knows. We were just seemingly made for each other. After about a month, she kind of opened up more about who she was, found out a lot of things. She said one day, I have something to tell you. I haven't told you before, but I have a kid. I send money for my kid, and I don't send any money for a long time because I haven't been working. And I'm thinking, yes, you haven't been working. You've been living with me. That was her first request for money for her kid. She said she usually sent 10,000 baht a month, and I really want to stay with you. I love you. I felt like I've never felt so good with anybody, she said. Would it be okay if you give me 10,000 a month so that I can stay with you? I didn't think I don't want a transactional relationship, although at this point it probably was transactional, though it was different. Handing over actual direct cash I felt very different about than paying for everything. Paying for everything is one thing, though direct cash is something else. Although I promised myself when I arrived in Thailand to live as a retiree that I would never be the guy that did that, when you actually find yourself in that position, when you're happy and content with the way life's going, you couldn't be happier with lots of different things. You find yourself just saying yes and compromising. Of course, I will give you 10,000 baht a month. So before I know it, I'm now giving her 10,000 a month and paying for everything. I was happy though, that's the thing. When you're happy, you are prepared to accept compromises that you wouldn't otherwise accept. For me, that is the case, and 10,000 a month, here it is, and this went on for a couple more months. Again, life's great. In fact, life's fantastic. But it was probably 2 months later when she said, I feel like I really love you and I feel like I don't want to meet anybody else ever again. The problem is, I'm sending money for my family, for my kid. I don't have any money for myself, and I never have enough money to go and buy food if I want to go out, and I always have to ask you. She was, let's say we were in a room and we didn't want to go out that evening, she would say, can I have some money to go and get some food? And yes, I gave her 100 baht or 200 baht. She said, wouldn't it be better if I just gave her an amount of money every month so that she could have and manage her own things? The way she sold it to me, it made sense, and I agreed. So I find that I'm giving her now 15,000 for her and 10,000 for her kid, 25,000 a month in total that she's getting out of me. And I'm not alarmed by this, although it is a lot of money to hand over. It's a considerable amount of money, considering I could, use that money and go out 10 times in a month and have a great time and not have any commitments. But I'm in love with her. I suppose to have to say it like it is, I was completely in love with her. I was smitten. I was head over heels. And I think she was just using that to sink in her teeth. Now I'd committed to 25,000 baht a month, but I wasn't upset by that or angry about it or unhappy about it. I was happy at the time with it, and I was good with it, and I was going along with it, thinking it was great and thinking that this is everything I thought it was. I would say at this point that Thailand had really given me the happiness that I always thought life was meant to give you, and I would think back to my old life when I was with my family before she divorced me. I would have thought I was happy then, though I kind of understood that I wasn't happy then, because this was real happiness. I felt alive. Thailand gave me happiness. Thailand gave me this real sense of happiness that I don't know, I'd never had before, and that's why I allowed that to happen. The next step, which was again quite a lot of time later, we're not rushing into things, just seemed to be, though, I wanted to solidify what I had with her. Because although what I had, if I look back, was crazy, I was just paying for her to be with me, I felt like I was in love with her, and I was, and I felt like she was in love with me, and she claimed to be. So I thought we needed to get married. I can remember asking her to get married, and she said yes, she'd love to get married. She thought I would never ask. She'd never been married before, always dreamt of marrying, and there I was thinking we would just, and I've heard guys get married and had friends who got married and told me how easy it was, thinking we'd just go and find one of those little officers around Plunchit, get them to do all the translation of documents, help me get the paper I needed from the embassy, the British embassy, which was still on that road before it was moved. Then have them act as witnesses and the district office sign the papers, and that would be it. As soon as it was marriage, though, she started talking about family, the family situation, and how we need to go up there, we need to have a party, we need to show the village. And, you've heard this time and time again, I've heard it time and time again. I've heard all guys talking about it, and I suppose I'd heard it and had friends who had been up to Isan and got married, and they described it, and I don't know why I didn't think that was going to be the case, but it was quite apparent it was. I felt a bit uncomfortable by that, though, what choice did I have? I wanted to get married to her, she wanted to get married to me, I was in love with her, and if that's what it would take to make her happy, that's what I was prepared to do. We went up for my first time in Isan, up to Buriram, and I actually quite liked the city, in all honesty. It wasn't bad at all. It seemed to be, on the up and up. Although her village was quite a long way from the city, and that was very primitive, it was very, very basic, though the people were warm and friendly. And, let's skip ahead a bit and say that yes, I had a whole ceremony. She looked beautiful in her wedding clothes, and it cost me a lot of money. Don't want to say anything more than that, because I did things that I regret doing. But anyway, it cost me 10 grand sterling. Definitely a lot of money. After we were married, I just felt a bigger connection to her and an even bigger connection to Thailand, and I was happy. I have to keep saying that, I really was. And I'm getting my income, my pension. I'm getting older, as people do. My money seems to be lasting at reasonable rates. A really reasonable rate. It's not going down too much, although it's going down based on the wedding and other things. But I'm not really concerned, and I am happy. Thailand's made me the happiest version of myself. I've never been happier, and it was the point my kids actually came out for a visit. And I can remember them coming and meeting my new wife, and they were very open about it. They were very kind, they weren't rude, they weren't laughing or anything, and they just took it for what it was. Said, Dad, as long as you're happy, that's great, and I was happy. I can remember taking them to Koh Samet, telling them where I met her and things like that. She's really nice to my kids, she's not being funny with them, she's not anything. She's just like you'd expect and want her to be, and she was really great about it. When my kids left, I think, and this might sound quite crazy, but the fact that they didn't disapprove of her, the fact that they seemed that I was happy, and they were happy that I was happy, and they didn't have anything negative to say, and she didn't have anything negative to say about them, and everything was okay, I think that was when I kind of came to the conclusion that what I had was absolutely perfect, and any small doubts that might have still been left in my mind that this was not a good idea, or that she had bad intentions, or I was stupid, they'd all gone. I think I must have had that odd doubt every now and then, which is why I didn't invest money into anything big up until then. Because although I was 99% sure, it's that 1% of things that really acts in your mind, that's really front and centre of your mind, even though it's only a tiny fraction of it, but it plays with you, it does. But after they left, it wasn't playing with me anymore. It was like I was 100% completely content, completely happy, completely set in the understanding that what I had was great and nothing was ever going to go wrong with it. It was from there that, me and my wife are starting to talk about putting down some firmer roots. We were living in the same rented place in Phnom Penh that I'd lived in ever since I'd moved to Thailand. It wasn't small like many people seem to go for. I knew straight away that I needed something that was going to be the sort of place I would like to live in long term. I didn't want to live in a shoebox, though it wasn't small, but it wasn't like a home. I think that's the thing. Because we looked around, at having our own condominium, buying a condominium, because I knew a foreigner couldn't own land, but they could own a condo. But one of the problems I found is, everywhere you'd look at, they would be nice places. You could have good views, you could have the kitchen facilities, you could have Western amenities, pool and gym, but it didn't feel like a home. To me, a condo doesn't feel like a home in a way like a house does. A house, you've got a chunk of the country, you've got a piece of it, you've got your driveway, even though it might be small. You've got a tiny back garden, even though it might be small. You've got a place to sit outside, again, it might be small. But I think that's how I understood it. That's why they let foreigners buy condos and not houses, isn't it? Because it doesn't mean the same thing. A condo doesn't mean what a house does. When you start looking at the prices of condos and comparing them to the prices of houses, you can't really understand how a condo can cost more than a house, because you don't get anything with it, apart from a space in the sky. And I believe, you want a portion of the freehold land, which is why you're only allowed to own up to 49% of the total area of the building. Though again, it's not a home, is it? We start looking at houses around Bangkok. Though immediately, as soon as you get out of the areas you want to be in, you don't want a house in Rangsit, or you don't want a house in Minburi, or anywhere where we were looking at these houses. I wasn't interested in that whatsoever. I wanted something in the area I wanted to be in, and if I couldn't be in the area I wanted to be in, I didn't want a house. And we were looking for a long time and ultimately decided that, okay, if we want what we want, we can't be in Bangkok. By this point, we'd done a lot of travelling together to numerous places that were typical with tourists and expats, yet not one of them felt like I could live there. I could not have lived on Koh Samet, I thought, because of the fact it was an exception, because it was a national park, so you can't actually live there, you can't have a house there. But yes, that's the problem, because Koh Samet is great. But Pattaya, no, definitely not. Phuket, definitely not. Koh Samui, definitely not. Hua Hin, definitely not. We even went up to Chiang Mai, though no, I didn't want to live there, because the pollution's so bad for much of the year, and that was how we got to the point of thinking about living in Buriram. I wasn't thinking about her village, I was thinking about Buriram town. They had a few housing developments coming up around there, and they were close enough vicinity to this tiny little expat scene in Buriram that didn't feel like it was going to be a drag. Again, like I said, Bangkok, you have a house within a budget. You're not a walk away or a 5-minute motorcycle away from the action. You're 30 to 40 minutes away. We decided to go and look at Buriram, at the options there. We went to look at some of these housing estates, and I'd been to see the family a number of times at this point, and we're going to and from the family and seeing that side of things, and I don't know how it happened, but it got to the point of saying, well, why don't we just build a house in the village? Why don't we do that? The village was a long way away, and then I'm thinking and looking back, why was that a better idea than being 30 minutes away from the action in Bangkok? I don't know. But that was what we were thinking about and talking about. And the thing that made me pull the trigger on that was understanding just how fantastic a house we could actually have. We could have a big 4-bedroom house, a big garden, and a car for less than half of the money that I had left. Then I have my income coming in. Then okay, we need to be sensible, but we can be. When we looked at the houses available to buy in Buriram, they were nice houses, though they weren't on the same level of grandeur. They didn't have anywhere near as big piece of land, and we couldn't have a car in for the same price. If I think about it, I think it was her enthusiasm at the thought of having a house in her village, and it was her actions and how she was behaving on the thought of having a house in her village, how she was being more attentive and more exciting, even more so than normal, because she was never not any of this, she was always perfect, but now she was being even more perfect, and I didn't look at that as her being manipulative. I didn't think about that, but looking back, I think that's what she was doing. So I pulled the trigger, and we started building this house in Buriram after finding some land and buying a car and renting a place in the city in the meantime and going to check on the progress all the time and just loving life. It was going fantastically. Life is everything that I think it is, and Thailand has given me this sort of happiness that I've never felt before, and then we moved in, and I'm still happy. Not long later, though, that's when I start noticing lots of things that, although you witness it in the village from time to time when you're there visiting, you don't realise that it's a day-to-day thing. I'm not saying that this was much of an issue, and I'm not saying that I regretted it to start with, though all the things and the trappings of village life that happened were quite difficult to get used to. I felt like I got used to them, and I accepted them for what they were, and I believed life was just going according to plan, and the happiness was there. You might be thinking, well, what's the problem then? Everything seems like it's going great. You've adapted to life in the village, you've still got most of your money left. But I would have to push back and say I didn't have most of my money left. It actually cost me a bit more than expected, and I had about 40% of what I arrived with. Maybe 80 grand I had left in total, and although I felt like I could make it work, and I could budget accordingly, and I had the income coming in, it would be, due another pension at some point, the government pension at some stage, and I felt like I could make it work. But I made the error that so many other guys tend to make, which was, I was over-invested and over-enthused about her enthusiasm and over-invested in her enthusiasm about the things that she wanted to do there. Because every time we'd gone anywhere, she'd never talked about wanting to do anything. She'd always just seemed to want to be happy and content, and that's what I wanted. Now she starts talking about wanting to develop herself more in the village. I believe she wanted to be like the big person in the village. She wanted to be more than she was. Now she has this nice house and nice car. Nice car is relative. It was decent, though it wasn't flashy. Now she wanted something more than that. She wanted to be seen as being a boss, and I think that's what it was. She wasn't happy with what she had. She wanted to be a boss of people. She looked around at what other people had and what she had, and she just perhaps developed these feelings about herself, about who she was, that perhaps were over-elevated. She started talking about wanting to invest money into things, wanting to buy some land to do some farming. And we wouldn't do the farming, other people would farm for us. And she's talking about this, and she wanted to own a lot of land, and I knew I couldn't own land. The thing was, though, I'm getting worked up in her enthusiasm. Ultimately, she convinced me to buy about 10 rai of farmland, which wasn't too badly priced, though again, money that should not have been used. And this was rice land, by the way, and the plan was, she said, to grow something else on it. I didn't know anything about farming, still don't know anything about farming, but I would assume she did. She said we can grow other things like vegetables and fruits on this rice land. We can grow these things and make more money off it. And then she's talking to her family after we've bought this land, saying what we're going to plant. And they're having this conversation back and forth in Thai, and she says to me, "Oh, my papa," she called her father her papa, "my papa tell me cannot grow anything on this land because flooding." I understood that rice land flooded, and yes, this land flooded. So I'm saying, well, didn't you know that before you bought it? And she said, no, we just have to grow rice. Okay, so I invested, and this was, I overpaid for the land. Probably about 20 grand I paid for this 10 rai of land. 20 grand sterling. How can we grow rice on it? How much can we make from that? And she's looking and saying maybe 50,000 baht. And I'm thinking, that's like a grand for a 20 grand investment. Thinking to myself, that's 5%, but I don't have enough money to just make 5% on it. It's only 50,000. I don't have enough to invest at 5%. So we need to make this money last and spend it. That's what I was thinking. But also I was thinking, if we invest more money, perhaps then we can get a bit of a better return doing something else, plus the income I've got, then we can live great. And that was the ultimate problem. Because even though it felt uncomfortable and we had this land, rice was planted, and that seemed to be going okay, I started investing in other things as well. We had a pig pen built and we started investing in pigs. We got these guys working for us, all in her family, and this was meant to make 10%, though it's actually making minus 10%. Because by the time you've paid for someone, paid for the food, paid for everything you need, then you come to sell the pig, you have to sell it for less than the price of everything cost, and that was an alarming event. That was shocking, in fact. We've got all these pigs and it's costing money, and she's not able to compute in her mind that we're losing money. She thinks that we've got pigs and we're selling pigs and it's great and she's happy. She thinks she's really big in the village and she thinks people are looking up to her. And it was when we had this pig incident when I started to push back and get quite upset about things and say, no, this isn't right, we're losing money, and she just couldn't work it out. The rice did bring in some money, though I believe then that the family is dipping into the rice supplies that we need to sell, so it wasn't bringing in as much. And when we were doing the pigs, before that went wrong, we'd also invested in lots of other things. We dug quite a big pond and put fish in it, and okay, that made a little bit of money, but we're not talking tens of thousands, we're talking single thousands. Before long, after I'd been living there for about 3 years, it got to the point where we had all these little investments in all these little things. I had my 750 quid a month pension coming in, which we could probably have lived on, though I was getting very, very angry all the time because everything that I'd invested in, it didn't produce the returns that she claimed it would produce. It didn't bring in the money she claimed it would, and she's behaving very differently now because she's got all these things, what she considers fantastic money-making operations going on around her, but she doesn't understand what goes into it and what comes out of it. She's being really big-headed in the village. She's being like the big person, and yet she's got a nice house and a nice car and all these things going on, and I'm the one who's funded it, coming to the realization that all these things haven't gone according to plan, and she's oblivious to the fact that it hasn't gone to plan. That's when we started to fall out more and more and more, and it went on for a long time. It didn't come crashing down quickly, though I'd say I managed to stick it out for another whole year, living on the money that my pension was bringing in. And it could have worked if she was the same, but she was always out talking about things with other people and how great she was. And we'd be talking about the pigs, and I'd say, get rid of the pigs, we're losing money on it. I'm losing money on it. And she's like, no, we need the pigs. People come to buy pig from us for a wedding. People need pig from us. And it was like she was this persona about herself, or she had this persona about herself in the village, like she was important in the village, and she didn't realise we were losing money. And we just started falling out more and more. Then she's not sleeping in the same room anymore, not telling me to leave or anything, but probably wanted me to, and she's going out to see people all the time. I'm staying in, I'm alone, and I'm miserable, bored, drifting further apart, and I heard through the grapevine that she was involved with this guy in the village, and it hurt me, the fact that she was involved with this guy. It just hurt me so much, the fact that I allowed all this nonsense to happen. I couldn't believe what I'd done, and all this money had gone. No money left, apart from my pension coming in, and a little bit, I must admit, but it got to the point where we just had to part ways. It was completely ridiculous nonsense, all of that had happened. I couldn't believe it. And I just found myself in this ridiculous way because of my own stupidity for allowing all of it to happen. Thailand really did make me feel alive in a way I'd never felt before. It really did give me happiness. Then it kind of took hold of it and took it all back and took away from me in such a visceral way. If I think about that time when we were doing those things, and if I was getting more angry, I suppose, how things were going, if I just allowed her to do what she wanted and lived off the small pension that I had until I got the government pension, things would have potentially worked. I don't necessarily think that she was deliberately trying to force me to leave by being how she was. I don't necessarily think that that was the case. I just think it was her wanting to be this big person and believing that she was already this big person, and me not wanting her to believe she was, that caused this to happen and caused everything to go wrong, and why we ended up getting a divorce. Of course, she was left with absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. I also believe that I don't believe she would have got involved with that guy in the village romantically if things hadn't happened the way they did. Perhaps it was her plan all along, who knows? Nobody will ever know, and I didn't know, and I just couldn't face being in Thailand anymore. I went back home with my tail between my legs and, well, kind of got my head back in the game. I didn't leave with nothing, like I said. I had about 15 grand left. That was the money I left in Thailand, although I transferred a bit across. I didn't leave with nothing, and I might as well have done, though, I suppose, because it wasn't a lot. After about 6 months, though, as I said, we were divorced, I did decide to go back to Thailand, because back then, 750 quid a month, you could still live a basic life, and that's what I ended up doing. I just went back to retirement, just living the way I was living a basic existence, and have done that ever since. And I regret immensely what I did before, because that was what my life was meant to be, but it wasn't. That's all I can say. I'm not happy at all. I felt in a way like I've had everything in my life, and now I've got nothing. I felt like Thailand gave me happiness, but now it's given me sadness, as strange as that might sound. And the problem is, I didn't want to go back to work, so my choice was go back to Thailand or go back to work. But I chose Thailand on a small budget. If I could go back and change it, I would have gone back to work, wouldn't I? Because now I would have worked and I would have had more money, and now I would be in a better position, though I chose then more than I chose the future, so that's what I did. That's where I want to leave my story. It was a roller coaster ride. Fell for the same kind of traps every single guy falls for in his life, it seems, in Thailand. The village. How did I end up there? I don't know. How did I end up investing in things that she wanted to invest in? I don't know. But I do know, don't I? Because when I was with her, I was happy. She did things with me that nobody else had ever done. I was really happy. I was the happiest I'd ever been. And I felt a sense of happiness that I didn't feel before. And that allowed me to continue wanting that feeling, even though I shouldn't have wanted it. I should have been sensible and accepted less, though I wanted to feel great. I suppose that's why I ended up with absolutely nothing.